This is Unit 1 of Anatomy and Physiology. So first we're going to cover some anatomical language. There are basic terms like directional terms, planes, and anatomical positions. So first, the anatomical position. This is an anatomical position with your arms out and palms facing outward. And you're also standing straight, so your head is aligned with your spine. This is the anatomical position in the anterior position. The anterior position is basically facing forward. So there are a few different planes. The first is the sagittal plane, and this will be the frontal plane. This is the parasagittal plane. This is the transverse plane, and this is an oblique plane. So there are two different views. So the first one is a posterior view, which means you're seeing the back side, and this is the anterior view. The anterior view is seeing the front side. Now there are a few directional terms. Proximal means pointing to where the limb connects to the body. So if that is your limb and that is your joint, the arrow is pointing in the proximal direction. If that is your limb and that's the joint, the arrow is the proximal direction. Now distal means pointing away from where the limb connects to the body. So likewise, if this is your limb and that is your joint, basically distal is just pointing away from the joint. So you can see that on the posterior side as well. And this will be the midline. Medial means pointing towards the midline, while lateral means pointing away from the midline. Superior means pointing towards the top or to the head, while inferior means pointing downwards toward the feet. There are some specific terms, as you can see here. They go into much more detail on every specific part of your body. These are really specific anatomical directional terms, and there's a lot more than just the ones I've shown. Now we will talk about organ systems, the level of organization, the systems and their functions individually, and also how they function together. This is an atom. It is comprised of neutrons, protons, and electrons. Atoms make up a molecule. These molecules will also make up a cell. So cells are made of molecules like carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. Organs are made of tissues, and those tissues are made of cells. These organs will make up an organ system, which is what we will be learning. So there are a few major organ systems: the skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, respiratory, digestive, urinary, lymphatic, integumentary, and reproductive systems. We will focus on these four and how they work together. First, we'll talk about the skeletal system. So the skeletal system's function is to provide structure, support, protecting organs, and producing blood cells. So it has actually a variety of functions. And the muscular system. So the muscular system's function is for movement, which is pulling on the bones by contraction. And it's basically made of muscle tissue. And here's the nervous system. Its function is to transmit signals between body parts, and usually via electrical signals. So the nerves will go throughout your entire body. How do these systems work together? Let's take a look at a specific example of giving birth. The major systems at play are as follows: skeletal, muscular, nervous, and reproductive system. So first, the nervous system will send signals to the muscles so they can contract and pull on the bones of the skeletal system. Then the muscles will pull on these bones to create movement in the reproductive system, and the contraction will allow the fetus to be pushed out. Now let's take a closer look at how the tissues of those organs are structured. There are four types of tissues: epithelial, muscle, connective, and nervous tissues. We'll look at their structure and function. So the epithelial tissue lines organs like it's kind of like skin, and it protects, absorbs, secretes, and also filters. Epithelial tissue has many shapes. So simple means it's one layered, stratified is more than one layer, while pseudostratified is a mix of simple and stratified. It also can be squamous, which means it's squashed, cuboidal, which is a cube shape, and columnar, which is a column shape. Cuboidal allows for greater absorption because of its larger surface area. Therefore, we can confirm that shape affects function. Now let's look at connective tissues. It is the most diverse and abundant tissue type. It fills spaces between organs and tissues, and it provides protection, transport like red blood cells, stores energy, and also immune responses like macrophages and mast cells do. Let's look at macrophages. It is a phagocyte, which means it eats bacteria. So if that's a macrophage and that's a bacteria, what it will do is it will swallow the bacteria and break it down into pieces. Because it is an antigen-presenting cell, it will present antigens. This allows for T cells to come and bind to the macrophage, and this T cell, after binding, can produce immune responses. Now let's look at muscle tissues. There are skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle tissues. A skeletal muscle tissue looks like this. So essentially, it has like tube-like shapes and produces a fiber-like muscle. It is compact, and this allows for the muscle to pull on the bone for movement. And this fiber-like shape looks like that under a microscope. Cardiac muscle tissues are like also fibery, but they have more branching, and it makes up the heart. So its function is to contract the heart to pump blood. The nervous muscle tissue looks like this. Essentially, the structure is a lot of branching, and this allows nerves to reach many places of the entire body. So one signal can go to so many places, and therefore it can amplify the signal because of the branching, and this means it's more efficient in transmitting signals. That is Unit 1. Thank you for watching, and these are the topics covered.